Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you find yourself today. My name is Victoria McMahon, and I'm an advocate with the Language of Consciousness Institute. I come to you to have a conversation about reflecting upon this year and how this year has been a year of self-study for me. The practices that I have been steeping in that bring me into more of a sense of being who I am to myself and who I am in the world. So one of the things that I think is an important reflection for me is that I've been a practitioner of yoga movement and yoga philosophy for over 20 years. It has been a practice. It has been a practice of a movement through the poses. It's been a practice of exploring my relationship to not only the body in movement, as well my emotional states, the fluctuation of emotions, and the fluctuation of thoughts that come and go. Whether my physical practice of yoga is a deep and vibrant physical movement practice or a slow meditative observing practice, the observing has always been there for me. And the observing into my state of being has developed over time. And in particular this year, I started out in January kind of in a space of what is self-study, self-training, what is my practice for 2022? I was definitely aware of the times that we find ourselves living in, call us to be particularly attentive to the deep fluctuations that's occurring, not only with us as people, but our systems of government and how we relate through organizations, and also what's happening with our relationship to the planet and how we are caring for ourselves, for her, and how she is caring for us. And are we in full relationship with all of these many changes? So my practice changed quite a bit over the last few years because COVID shifted me from teaching movement classes regularly to only being in my own movement practices most of the time. And moving through an experience with COVID also changed my relationship with my body and what types of practices nourished and restored my body, and what my body had capacity for over the last few years. So I've been particularly reflective from the beginning to the end of this year in that movement and how I've self-studied or self-trained in what is on behalf of the body, what is on behalf of my emotional state, and whether I'm in reaction or in response to the many changes that are occurring, not only in my body, but also in my relationship to myself, the world around me. So I wonder if you're finding any of that true for you in how you're experiencing your own state of being over this past year, especially. And how are you drawn to certain practices, certain ways of paying attention or observing what is on behalf of and what is maybe depleting for not only your physical, emotional, and mental systems, as well in your relationship to others, to the world, and how you are being connected in or feeling not connected in at times. Um, so, one of the things that I find especially interesting is in my own self study, I have been I've been in the pondering of what it means to have a practice, why I have sustained a practice of yoga for all these years, and how that has guided me to have a deeper practice at this point in time. And that deeper practice is the ability to be more open and honest in myself. Open and honest for me is the idea of what does bring me joy? What do I crave for myself to have, to be, to do? And what is no longer in my inquiry? What is no longer in my attention? What am I letting go of? I've definitely noticed the letting go of a stronger physical practice the last few years in order to nourish my body. And then just recently recognizing that my body is communicating to me, okay, I feel nourished. I feel like given that restful time physically and being in a deep listening of restorative yoga, restoring my connection to that which loves me and is on behalf of me, that feeling of deep connection to source, however you label the term of source. And in that listening recently, I heard my body saying, I want more physical strength again. I want to move in a way that's strengthening, that's increasing my stamina, increasing my capacity on a physical level. And so part of my self-study, my training this year was to be patient and listen and see, when does the body want what it wants? And how do I move into that? And that's for me part of what practice is that deep listening for the body that communicates. And in our culture, more often than not, we have heard that isn't an efficient, effective, effortless way to be in the world, that we need to set goals and we need to push through. And so part of my year of self-study, self-training was to not push, was to relax and be in a different kind of practice, to be in a practice of a listening to the body knowing in a deeper way than I've ever done before. Like I've always been an observer of the body. Being an observer in a deeper listening gives me a greater access to the connection of feeling and thinking through the mind, to not rely on my mind thinking, but to have the full expression of thinking from the body from the emotional state of what emotional practice also nourishes the body, nourishes the thinking to feel stable and steady and relaxed in itself, so that I get more access to a greater sense of what is to be known. It is the informing knowing, the in dash forming knowing. And so for me, informing knowing is the movement of body, emotion, and thought to be greater accessed into the whole being of who we are, observing the being of who we are. And the reason I wanted to share some of my experience of this practice is to invite you to consider, as you're reflecting upon the end of this year, what practices nourish and nurture you. They may be practices related to movement. That movement may be a physical practice such as yoga or Tai Chi. It also may be a movement of how do you move through your daily life experience? How do you move with the thoughts that come and go? How do you move with the fluctuation of emotion? Are you able to feel that practice, that what you put your attention on a daily basis? Are you able to feel that connection that is purposeful for you, that is interesting, lively, that is calling upon all those parts of you that want to voice and be heard as who you authentically are? That's a practice to me. So you could be in a practice of movement like I am. You could be in a practice of how you build and cultivate deep family relationships, and that you give full attention from body, emotion, mental, mind, languaging in the practice of building family, developing yourself in a particular way of exploring working, as we call it, the way you play and enjoy what you love to do for yourself and with others on behalf of self and others. That's what work. I find that's what the work I'm called to. It's what does call you. And where does it call from within you? I think that's a really important way to consider what will be the practice that you create in 2023. What calls you? What calls for you to engage in your life more deeply? And what does that look like? Can you picture it in your mind? Can you feel it as a part of you? Does your body register being called towards something very specifically? So, one of the ways in which I'm exploring that in what I offer is I'm co-facilitating a practice of movement in body, in emotion, in the mind, the languaging of observing and observing being, using movement and the templates of creation. The Language of Consciousness Institute provides you access to these templates for writing what you crave, what you observe. So you can get access to these templates of observing and observing being. And you can explore over the next few weeks before our experience of observing and observing being templates is launched in mid-January. We'll be doing 2 sessions for 2 hours so we can take a deeper dive into what it means to be observer, to observe our being in the moment and create that sense of connection to ourselves, to what it is that we want to practice, that we want to study, and train ourselves in deepening that connection. So I will put a link along with this conversation to the Language of Consciousness Institute for moving sentiently with observing and observing being. And you'll also see this on Facebook. And Lori and I hope to see you in January, the 9th and the 16th on Mondays. Thank you. Be well.